I just like to guys introduce you to Mr. Preet Khalsa here. He is the one of the greatest mentor at LTS and most experienced mentor who is associated with the LTS Accelerator program. Well, there are so many things to mention about him, but if I could keep it limited, then I think it would be better. All right. So, Mr. Preet Khalsa is a forward-thinking innovation leader and entrepreneur with a proven history of creating award-winning tech products and paradigm-breaking disruptive business models. As a global innovator, he have led small startups, team, large international enterprises, and everything in between. As a chief technology officer and senior technology consultant, he combined his expertise in technology, management, finance, and sales to see the complete innovative life cycle through from inception to industry adoption. In every role, he embraced technology to drive positive transformation and achieve optimal business outcomes. In addition, he is also a very strong public speaker. So, guys, now over to you, Mr. Preet Khalsa. Today, he is going to let us know about the how the startups can redefining the licensing model and come overcome the challenges which they are facing these days.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. I actually did my own introduction, and I'm going to just skip it right over because
Yeah,
you've already done that. Um, what I will say is that my focus on almost my entire career has been on product. Product as a discipline did not really exist until just a few years ago. Typically, the person responsible for the product was also the CTO of a technology company. And so my focus is based on product. And what's really important is marrying the product with the business model. And this was a discussion that I had with LTS a long time ago when we met at HIMSS. And so why do we care about business models? Let's start with the basics. The best product does not always win. As was mentioned in the introduction, I have been a serial CTO, created many companies. I failed many companies as well. And that's because we did have the best product, but we didn't necessarily win. The company went under. The best business model always wins. And I'll give you the best example of this is Apple. Apple, when it comes to hardware, software, or anything else, is not necessarily the best on the market, but their business model is such that they always win. The product that you make must support your business model. So typically you have your CEO and your CTO and you're talking to each other. The CEO says, I want to do this. Then the CTO has to actually make a product that suits the business model. Now, the model must also support the product. If you have a product that lends itself to a particular business model, then you should be thinking about changing the business model to support. So this is why we talk about this. Let's talk about history. Okay, we're in a very modern world right now. In the old days, you made a product and then you sold it. Simple. Or you had a service, wash my car, cut my grass, and then you charged by an hour or an estimate based on the effort that it took. This was a very simplistic thing. Everything was an exchange. So what is the purpose of a business model? Primarily, there we go, is that you scale the price of your product with the value that the customers get. If you sell your product for $1 and your customer takes that and sells it for $10,000, there's a problem. If you sell your product for $10 and your customers can only gain $11 in value, there's no ROI. So you have to have a business model where you are profitable, but you are equally sharing in the profitability that your customers are or the value that they're getting. So what this does is it creates a sustainable business. If you are selling something for $1 and somebody else is uh, selling it for 100, that's not sustainable because eventually you're going to get priced out of the market. When we talk about the value that the customers get, it could be actual monetary value. For example, you sell somebody something for $35, they sell it for $65. They can see the value because they're making a $30 profit. Sometimes there's a perceived value. There's a benefit that is not in dollars. And I'll go back to the Apple example. Why do a lot of people buy Apple products? Aside from the ease of use, let's forget about that. If you go to India, where I was born and grew up, as you can tell by the accent, uh, people get an iPhone because it's a status symbol. It's worth more than the money that was being paid for it. And oftentimes, that value can be monetized. So even though the hardware costs the same as any Samsung phone, Apple charges more because there's a perceived value associated with it, and they actually charge for that. So we have to look at what it is, the value that you are actually dealing with, and price it accordingly. Okay, I have to put this in. People talk about the new economy. Back when the internet bubble was happening, everyone's saying it's the new economy. You don't have to make a profit. The new economy is a myth. Today, with the AI hype, okay, you still have a profit. The biggest example of this is the company OpenAI. OpenAI has spent so much money training their LLM, but they're not profitable. And they are a long way from being profitable. They did it for a reason, which we'll get to, but you have to remember that you must make a profit. You have to start with cash flow positive and then move to profitability. Otherwise, you have no business. So how do you create a business model? You look at all the players and determine who you are really selling to. And I have it here in my picture. It's a cast of characters from a play. And when I'm building a business model with somebody, I always say, who are all the actors in the play? What are their motivations? If you look at Hamlet as a play, what does each character have as their motivations? What are their lines indicating as to their thought processes, etc.? And if you follow the discipline of design thinking, you create persona for every person involved in what you are doing. And you put their motivations and put examples of the things that they might say to you or to other people or their thoughts in their minds. It's very, very important to know not just who your customer is, but everybody else in the player, because the real buyer might not be who signs the check. Okay? So you need to know, what are they really paying for? Is it the prestige? Is it to get profitability? Is it to reduce their own costs? Who are the influencers? So typically the person making the decision makes their decision based on advice that they're getting from the people around them, the influencers that are involved in the decisions. You need to identify the influencers and know what their motivations are and actually create something in the business model that suits them. I'll be giving examples of this. Who are the gatekeepers? You will never reach the decision maker until the gatekeeper allows it to pass through them. So again, everybody in this cast of characters has a role. They're the influencers, they're the gatekeepers, they're the people that are paying for this, they're the people that are benefiting for this. So the real source of revenue and the real buyers are not always obvious. I have a few examples at the end of the presentation talking about business models that are not really what you think they are. So let's talk about a subscription model, because I would hazard a guess that most people that are coming out in the space that we're working with LTS, etc., are software as a service. Typically, that is based on a subscription model where everyone pays So what is the value that you're providing? Are you providing an online calendaring system that people can join in like Calendly and affect your calendar? Who is benefiting from this? In other words, who is gaining revenue or lacking in costs? How do you price it? Do you price it per user? A good example of this is, for example, you look at something like Jira. They charge per person using their software. Is it per transaction? If you're looking at uh, systems like Paytm, which is a Canadian company, for those in India, you might not know that, but it's a Canadian company. Paytm charges per transaction. Is it the volume of data that you have? Typically, when you're doing big data analysis, companies like Tableau, et cetera, they might price you based on how much data that you're doing. Other people, credit card clearing companies, charge on the basis of a percentage of what you are making. So if you're selling something for $10, we'll take 35 cents for every $10 purchase that you've done. You need to price things so that the scaling happens accordingly. So to give you an example, if you were to buy Tableau, one user, and that person is examining 5 petabytes of data, that needs to be priced based on the data that's being analyzed, because the value of that analysis does not scale with the number of users. Yet I gave the example of Jira. With Jira, the value is based on how many people are using it, because you're coordinating amongst those people and providing a value for smoother communications and the productivity improvements. I'm trying to come up with the word. I apologize. So even though you might price things that way, you also have to be aware of your own costs. So if it is data and you have to buy all that storage, then yes, you price it based on data. Or is it based on processing power? Then you might have to charge people by CPU. And if you look at the pricing for AWS, for example, you have things that are compute heavy, things that are data heavy, things that are bandwidth heavy, and you have to choose the appropriate one. And they have those different buckets so that they can scale the cost based on their actual cost as well. Let's talk about open source, because we're seeing a lot of this in the last little while. Did you start with something that is core open source? So is there out there like Linux, for example, that you're now taking and adding value to it and creating your own? Great examples of that are Red Hat. Are you layering on that? So are you creating more software, or are you providing services on that? Most importantly, with open source, is there a broad community appeal to get developers to contribute? If you open source something and only your developers are contributing it to you, then that's not a great way of having open source. If you have something that has a broad appeal and millions of people will say, yes, I want to use it and I will contribute to it, that's a great way to have open source as the baseline. So there's lots of dangers to this, because you could be competing with people that you are creating yourself. You need to provide something that they can't. So with Red Hat, they have some things in Red Hat that are rather unique, that their own consultants are very, very skilled at, because they were the developers for it. And therefore, they can provide that consulting services. Because in reality, Red Hat is there only to sell you their services. The software you can get with CentOS, and it's free. So I warn people that if you're looking at open source, you do this if you need a large number of developers and the appeal is great. So find something that is on the internet. Great examples for this might be image processing. If you look at things like Midjourney, DALI, and things like that, those are good examples of things that you might want to actually put out into open source, because real innovation will happen. And then whatever you found as your revenue source that doesn't involve the IP itself will actually make you money. So this is good for hobbies turned businesses. Very true, because you can't hire an army of developers. You'll get them for free. Let's talk about another form of doing business. If you're making a component that you're selling into something else, that is actually a very good business, because as people adopt your component and they go out there and sell it, they pay you a licensing fee for everything that they do. I work in healthcare, and there's a great company called Redox that actually does the connections between different healthcare providers and their software. They are a component that nobody ever even knows the name of, because they are embedded inside something else. You do it well and you embed inside everything else, because you decide that your IP is that we know how to connect to software A and transfer data to software B. And we're embedded inside software C that helps them do that. So this could be actually selling a library and code that you then update on a frequent basis. I see libraries for mobile applications, SDKs and the like, going out there all the time. Or it could be an API that people call to do the job for you. So you say transfer data from A to B, I'm C, I hit the API and I do it. That's a classic example of a business model where you want to charge by transaction. If you have patents, it might be worthwhile for you to not even sell your product, simply license it to other people to do that work. A good example of this is a company that's fighting Apple today. They're called Masimo. So every one of us probably is wearing a watch that is telling you what your heart rate is and what your blood oxygen levels are, etc. Masimo has the patent on those. Every single company, Samsung with their Galaxy watches, Google with their watches, maybe not the iWatch, because that's what the lawsuit's about. Uh, Everybody is licensing this patent, and Masimo literally has almost no products themselves. Okay, they might create a product to generate interest in a specific new area or field, but the fact is that they're just simply licensing their patents and making a ton of money, and then coming up with something new that they're going to license. This is the one area that I love the most, because patent licensing is fantastic, and also the intellectual property that your patent represents is actually worth a lot of money if it wants to get sold. Uh, so do keep that in mind. Think about patents. The moment you start a company, find a way to stay away from other people's patents so you don't have to license theirs, and that you can actually create a provisional patent in the US to get a priority date with the PTOs everywhere in the world. Create a patent right away and use that as the backbone of what you're doing, not just for protection from other people, but as something that you could turn into a revenue stream. Now, if you are selling something that is a product in the marketplace, a software as a service, think about the ability to perhaps white label it. So if you have uh, a streaming software for music, and you have a core IP for archiving music, protecting it with some kind of encryption, allowing a listener to listen to it, and then you just sell it to the Spotifys and the Tidals and the Apple Musics of the world, and then that becomes your world, and you simply white label it. Uh, I'll give you an example from my past experience. Everyone in the United States knows Teladoc because they know how to get a doctor from Teladoc. But what they don't know is you go and do a consultation with your local hospital or with your doctor, it may actually have Teladoc IP being used under the cover, and Teladoc simply uses their computers and puts your branding all over it, and they're selling your services. So white labeling is a fantastic opportunity to make money. And you should think about this when you're designing your product. How can we white label this product from day one? Okay. Freemium is also something very interesting. Give it away. Get it to go viral, gain traction. And then you sell something that people will want to pay extra for. In the online gaming world, people will pay to eliminate ads so they can get to the game sooner because they're so addicted to it. That's a really great enhancement that you can sell. Other times you can say, you can put limitations on. For example, a business card scanner. You can scan 10 business cards a day. If you want to go more, pay for the premium package. So think about how if you want something to go viral, it has to go viral to make it work. And then you upsell with the extras. Be careful about the upsells because the app stores like to take their money. For example, now, if you're signing up with a music service like Spotify or Tidal, you must do it off the app on your phone and then put that login into the app itself. Otherwise, every month, Google and Apple need to get paid, and people don't like that. OpenAI is a great example of this. You can get your ChatGPT free of charge. You want something good, you pay for the upscale. But I say it's not a really good example because they're not making nearly enough money from their freemium product. And that is because their real business model is to prove that their LLM and their learning model actually works, and that people who actually have uh, a body of data that can be analyzed and turned into an AI product will come to them. So they were looking at this at the long term. They had to go out and create a viral product using all the free publicity and that the viralness has created for them to get people to think about them as an option for something that they're doing. It takes a lot of money. This, we're just going to talk about examples. And as you see, Steve Jobs with the original iPod. The Apple iPod was not built to sell hardware. It was built to drive business to the real business model, which was iTunes. The idea that Steve Jobs had was to change the way music works. And so if you look at the history of music, before there was recording, if you wanted to hear music, you had to hear someone perform, and you had to pay that person to perform, whether that be in a concert hall or on the street as a freemium model where people just put whatever they could as they felt that they needed. But generally speaking, every performance was paid for individually. We got to recorded music, and we were pressing music in an analog fashion onto some kind of wax or vinyl. Then we went digital with CDs. Uh, he said we can deliver music, store it securely on a device, and have people listen to it and change the way it's being paid for. Instead of paying for a collection of music, meaning one CD, they can pay for it by a single song, 99 cents per song. Okay. And that was the business model that he had. He hadn't envisioned streaming at that point. I mean, he died before streaming actually happened. But iTunes was his idea. And he said, how do I get people to my store? The idea of recorded music digitally, meaning MP3s, had existed long before the iPod. But he wanted a store where people could securely buy their music and transfer it from place to place. It completely changed the way how people paid for them. And it needed a whole ecosystem to go around it. Accounts, they had to have a web interface. Everything changed. Your relationship to music changed. Recommendation engines suddenly started to come up. It just changed everything. The device was created to create the market for iTunes. That was its purpose. So sometimes your real IP is somewhere far away, and you have to create a device or something else, a software as a service, to go sell that for your purposes. I gave the example of Massimo. They do have wearables. They only do that for proof of concepts. I don't think they are profitable or make any money off it. They then want to sell the patent that other people can use that in their products. Another good example. This is what you heard Martin's voice earlier on the call. Martin and I have worked on a company called Equestrian Show Manager, and this was very, very interesting. I was a co-creator, and it was a real struggle to find a business model because a horse owner makes no money. He has extraordinary costs. Okay, you have to care and upkeep for the horse is very expensive, especially the veterinarian bills, food, cleaning, grooming, etc. The people who are putting on the shows make no money. Okay, this is the dirty little secret of the business. So who has the money? Who do we sell to in this marketplace? The existing world that existed here, there were two kinds of companies. One that sold a piece of software that you would put on a PC, load it up at the show. It ran in a single workstation. It was not internet connected, and they charged $300 per show. The poor show manager, that's $300 out of their pocket. The other end of the scale was the really big shows. When you go to the ones that are on TV, etc., there's another company called Show Management Systems where they have a very complicated system and they actually have to bring a server and all of this software and dedicated people, and they charge $12,000 per show. Still an expense. The smaller shows can't afford that. We wanted to create a software as a service. So we decided that from the show perspective, because the show is the gatekeeper, we talked about all the different actors in the play. The show manager decides what software they're going to use at the show. So let's not have this as a cost to the show manager. Through a revenue share, let's make that actually a profit center. So what we decided is that the people who make money at these shows, that have the money, are the parents of the children that are riding the horses. To give you an idea, in the United States today, if little Johnny or Sally wants to ride a horse, daddy or mummy has to pay roughly $300,000 a year for them to go riding. That's a lot of money. They're paying for the horses, they're paying for the training, they're paying for going to the show, having the horse transport the show, etc., etc., etc. Mummy or daddy has a lot of money. And they go to the show, spend an entire day to watch their son or daughter jump over fences for exactly 2 minutes, and they've wasted an entire day. What if we gave them internet access and they could work, and they get texted 15 minutes before their child is due to actually jump over the fences, and they can go by the sides, cheer them on. Little Johnny and Sally see their parents cheering them on. They're happy as can be. You're happy because you got your work done. You're networking with other busy executives. But I'm going to charge you for that little piece of information that's valuable. I'm going to charge you $5 per show. And I'm going to give $1 back to the show saying, here, you sold this at the show. I'm giving you a kickback. I make $4 profit for the show from the people that have the money. For these people, $5 is a cup of coffee at Starbucks. But the value of it is extraordinary, and they buy it at every single show. And it's a great way of changing the business model and finding a way to make money by finding out who really has the money, who is the gatekeeper and influencer that we can give money to actually promote our product and use our product so that we actually have a market. That is the creation of the business model for this. And of course, I created the business model for this company. That's why I know it so well. Another example is one that Martin and I have both worked on as well. I mentioned them earlier. When you call Teladoc and get a consultation with a doctor, there's almost no profitability in that consultation. That's the dirty secret about consultations. They make their money. They make their money from monthly subscriptions. So they go to large employers or insurance companies and say, "Take on Teladoc. We can reduce your healthcare costs, and we will charge you." And I'm making this number up. Is by no means $1 per person per month to be a on the system itself. And then we will include the cost of the consultations as part of our service to you. So the balance there is kind of important. If nobody uses our system, then why would you pay $1 a month per person to use the system? If too many people use a system, the benefit is given to the actual employers or the health insurance companies because they've reduced the cost of a consultation from roughly $500 to roughly $75. So extra bonus revenue share if the utilization hits a certain target, meaning that company, like the Bank of America, everybody switched over to Teladoc and they're now saving $225 per consult. And X number of people have done it, and therefore Bank of America has saved $20 million a year. Written into the contract with Teladoc is that there is a percentage of the savings that comes back to Teladoc. That's how you cover the downside and the high side. Teladoc promotes the system extraordinarily to get people to use it so that they don't lose the business because there was no utilization. If they get a certain utilization that's high enough to actually generate a profit for the Bank of America, then we get to share in the revenues. This is very, very important that you scale your revenues as part of your business plan to match the value of the customer. And you have to cover both ends. That if they don't get any benefit, that they don't pay anything. And if they get an extraordinary benefit, that they pay a lot. Your goal is to be somewhere on the far side, the good side of that. Another good example, and I only put this slide on this morning because I'm in a house using Starlink. Why do Teslas come with a free data connection? Have you ever wondered that? The Model S's and Model X's, you get a free data connection in the car and you can use it for your own purpose. Why is he giving it away? He's giving it away because all the data from your driving, all the sensors as you're driving, are being collected and being transmitted to Tesla. And he is using that as the body of data that is being used to train the AI that is being used for full self-driving. That is what he did. He took it upon himself to say, "I'll pay for your internet connection. You must sign away the ability that I'm going to be able to track and trace you and measure everything. I can see where the red lines are, the yellow lines, the blue lines, what the traffic look like, what cars look like, what people look like. What you braked in this situation, what was in front of me. Train the AI to do all of these things." Nobody else can match Tesla today for their self-driving because they don't have that body of driving data. And that was the brilliance of how full self-driving is being done. So in a lot of ways, the value of Tesla is the body of data that he's collecting. It's not the cars. It's not anything else. It's those are all a purpose. Like an iPod was a purpose to drive people to iTunes. These cars are put on the road to generate data to create full self-driving, which people will pay a premium for. Why does Starlink exist? I'm sitting here in a Starlink house. It exists because he built a company to put rockets into space. General Electric says they're going to put a satellite into space. They rent space on the rocket. Typically, it's not the full capacity of that rocket. There's extra space to launch other things. Well, you could try to go out and sell those unless you have your own company that has small modular satellites that can also be launched free of charge because GE is paying for the launch. You now get a worldwide internet service literally for free because the equipment itself is quite cheap. And judging by how they're falling apart in space, they were built quite cheap, kind of like Tesla's, but they're going into space free of charge. That's the brilliance of that business model. So that is what I have come up with. And at this point, I want people to ask questions and talk about a situation. Let's examine and go through the exercise of identifying the actors in the play and seeing how we can actually create a plot for the play and build a business model. So I'm opening it up for questions.
Yeah, I think there must be no questions, as people must be like me, very much amazed with this piece of content. I truly appreciate for sharing this great knowledge about the licensing model and talking about the different great people today in this slide. Thank you so much, Mr. Preet.
Well, thank you for putting this together. Thank you, everybody at LTS. And I hope to actually start building some business models with people to show the value of thinking completely differently and finding where the money is. And that's the key.
Yeah.
Find where the money is and create a model that will attract them and get past the gatekeepers and give the influencers something to actually use for their benefit.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, very true mentioned by you. Well, let me share some piece of information about the LTS accelerator 2 here, so that our attendees can could understand what LTS accelerators do here,
Yes,
as
please.
they take their precious time to join us today. Let me share my screen. It will take a hardly a couple of minutes, I believe. Uh, just let me know once you guys are able to see the screen.
We see it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for confirming. Well, let me introduce the LTS Accelerator program, what it's do. So, we have almost 14 years of experience in serving startups with maximum ROI and connecting them to the very right investors pool for the funding, for the raising funds. Well, we mostly work with the three things where we help them to do the cost-effective software development. This is very generic term, I would say, but very important too. Why? When we see like any founders talking to the investor, and they are trying to understand what kind of technology they have used to build their product or they are about to use, because the investor is wants to invest the money into the concept, not into the technology. So this is the very important aspect for the investor before investing or investing their funds in on any particular startups. Second, efficient marketing sales channel creation. I would say this is the very secret sauce for the today's enterprise companies as well. Like as we talk about the Microsoft, how they do sell. Are they going to door? No, there are thousands of sales channels who are selling their products, and that's how they are building the great revenues. Billions of revenue have been generated in last centuries. Last, deep investor network for fundraising. This is the key, like where the startups, like they are working very hard for their on their ideas, on their concept, so that they could get some good funding and they can work out on their concept and take it to the market with the next level so the people can get the benefit out of it. The LTS accelerator is completely based on the four pillars. The pillars are build, organize, market, and transform. Let's talk about the build first. In build, it's a very straight term. In this build term, we do development for their concept. We convert their idea concept into the software so that they can actually demonstrate their software to the investors, and they can take this application product to the market for the first round of tasting to understand what kind of reaction is coming out from the people who are the target audience for them. Second, organize. Very important term, I would say. from the prospect, from the aspect of the investors. Here we will work with them to polish their business plans, financial model, and investor presentation. Uh, I would say, yeah, this is the very one of the part of this organized today. You have showcased us and help us to understand how we can, redefine the licensing model on a next level. Third, market. Under the market, we help our startup clients, which are into the very pre-stage, I would say, to build their digital visibility, increase their social engagement, and generate a good leads for their business so that they can drive the show. Fourth, transform. As I said about the sales channels, so this is only about the sales channels. And in the last 14 years, as we are catering to so many startups till date, we have established great 120 partners of network, which are globally. And to the new clients who are getting associated with us at the pre-stage or the early stage of a startup, we take them to this our partners and help them to increase their sales channels. So once the sales channel is there, they have the sales definitely. Uh, there are two approaches always to work on the solution. One is the traditional approach, which is very much, I would say, conveyed to us already. Let's talk about the LTS growth playbook. So here, what we do, the secret behind the development under the LTS framework. So here we develop the product, but while developing the product, we also start the sales and marketing for that product, and we are running some campaigns. It could be social media campaign or different kind of surveys, or then we cultivate those campaigns, and the and we understand what kind of input the target audience have with the help of surveys, or by selling the product in the as a free premium. And that's how we came to know some feedback of the end customer, and that feedback we take it to the development team, and they inbuild that feedback with their product, and they continuously develop the product, and then the final product would reach to the customer, and that's how it help us to improve the product users experience. In traditional approach, what happened, we build the product completely, then the company start the survey campaigns, and then they came to know that these are the improvements area, and then again they stop the product, build the product by modification, and again launching it. But under the LTS growth playbook, it already covered the stage 1 and stage 2. So we save the time, we save the energy, and we save the cost. We are specialized across all levels of early stage life cycles, pre-startup, early startup, and mature startups. For mature startups, we gain a success like we have established a remote office for our USA and Europe based clients in Vietnam and India. We take the almost 30 plus people of strength in Vietnam for one of our client, and in India for I think we have 6 clients. One client we added in the last quarter only, and we set up their remote office with the capacity of 5 to 15 employees for different technologies like the uh, developers, designer, graphic designer, quality assurance tester, project managers, right? And so for these 6 companies, we established almost a remote office for 90 employees, considering the 15 employees for each company. Let's talk about the traction. Uh, if you can see on the screen, the Astonish and Neovex, both are the companies who joined LTS Accelerator program at the age of pre-stage. And within a couple of months, like they enrolled themselves with the LTS Accelerator program, and they implement the strategies, approaches, framework, which is conveyed to them with the help of our great mentors like Preet. And they got acquired by the companies like Z-Wave in 2015 and Citrix in 2014. And they have a great traction, I would say. Growth timeline, seeds, seedling is very much understood. Let's talk about the tree, fruit, and winner. At the stage of tree, we start establishing sales channels to bring new revenue growth, which I already conveyed just. Fruit. At the stage of fruit, we are helping our clients to building investors and the growth plan to raise of funds, and we start connecting them to the very right investors who are more interested into the similar categories, because sometimes we've seen the investors like they belongs to that particular industry, they are more keen to invest in their industry or their known industries only. So accordingly, we take our associates or the clients to the investor pools, and they are showcasing their product, and they got the good funding as well. Recently, the founder who has associated with us, he raised the 2 million funding from one of our investors, and other rounds are also going on with the other investors, because they have a very great project, great product in their mind, which is already into the market, and they are looking for more funding to launch their product in different geographies as well. So they have a target of 5 million. So 2 million is already achieved, which is committed, and 3 million is already in progress, which could be done in this current quarter. And that's how they got the convert themselves into the winner. So I appreciate, like, if anyone have any questions, then please shoot up to me so that I could answer it and address your queries. I think things are looks pretty much clear to everyone. So, anyways, thank you so much, guys, for joining us here. I'm just dropping my contact details and the Accelerator program web page link, so that you guys can take a look on the our web page, our offerings, and certainly you can reach back to me on my email address, and then we can connect and we can take it forward from there. You could come to know about the so many things about the accelerator program, the mentors who are associated with us, who are belongs to different skill sets, like some are into the sales, some are into the finance, some are great motivators, right? So let's connect one to one as per your interest, and we'll take it forward from there.
Yeah,
uh,
thanks everyone for the joining the great webinar sessions. And
Thank thank you for
yeah,
organizing it.
thanks,
Thank you.
Preet.
Thanks, Mr.
Thanks,
Preet,
thanks,
once again.
Neeraj.
Yeah, thanks, attendees.
Thanks,
Goodbye,
thanks.
Bye.
everyone.